Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFK Journey video. In this video I wanted to talk about some Supreme Arena defenses you can try for the new season, because the optimal defenses are going to be taking advantage of the faction talent tree. And one thing I was just made aware of that the developers mentioned, they're probably going to reduce the requirement of needing to deploy 4 heroes from the same faction to only needing to deploy 3 heroes. If that does happen, then that is going to be much better for everyone, because you're going to then be able to pull off a faction talent on pretty much all of your teams and create a more well-balanced team. When you had to deploy 4 of the same faction, it really restricts your options of which heroes you can run. And then also some people will be just unable to get the full benefit of faction talent on all of their teams. This also especially changes Celestial Hypogeans and makes them even stronger. Because previously, if you needed to deploy 4 of Celestial Hypogeans, that's already a difficult thing to do. And most people will not have 4 well built up Celestial Hypogeans that they would want to run in Supreme Arena, and then people would pass on the Celestial Hypogean faction talent. And that's what I was planning to do. But if you only have to deploy 3, for example, most people will have Rainier at Mythic Plus, and he's a fine option to use in Supreme Arena. And then if you have Scarlita Freestro as well built up, already those are 3 core Celestial Hypogean heroes you can deploy to get the faction talent activated, and they're all good in Supreme Arena as well. So definitely now that is a viable strategy. And the thing about Celestial Hypogean faction talent, it is very strong. The effect that you get from the Celestial Hypogean, just the base effect, it deals true damage to enemies in the most crowded area and stuns them for 1.5 seconds every 6 seconds. Now, this is going to go down with upgrades to every 3 seconds, 120% attack damage as true damage to the most grouped up enemies, 1.5 seconds stun every 3 seconds, and also, finally, it will merge with this other effect. If we just take a look over here, maybe. The other effect is here. Dark Talon buff. 3 seconds into battle and 6 seconds thereafter, the buffed ally creates a black hole that lasts for 3 seconds. Then cast it at the area with the most enemies, dealing magic damage and pulling them toward the center. So you're grouping up enemies as like a mini Iron ultimate, and then you're dealing true damage and stunning them. And both of these will be combined. If we take these upgrades here, if both prime carriers remain in the battle, their effects merge, and starting 3 seconds into the battle, they release an attack with both original effects every 3 seconds, with the radius extending to 2 tiles. Radius also increases to 2 tiles. This becomes crazy. Like, the effect of the Celestial Hypogean is just honestly broken. And so everyone's going to try to run a team like this for a Supreme Arena. And if you don't, you're basically going to be giving up 1 slot. Like, for example, if the enemy has a team of 3 Celestial Hypogean heroes who are relatively well built up, like Mythic Plus and above, they are probably going to beat all of your other factional teams just because of how strong these effects are. The only way that you would be able to counter this effect is if you manage to kill the prime carriers, because in order for this effect to continuously go off, the prime carriers need to survive. So that is going to be another thing. You'll want to choose your prime carriers wisely. Of course, Diurnal would be a great option, but if you choose Scarlita, for example, for the first 20 seconds she's guaranteed to be alive. And then for the other prime carrier, if you choose like a tank like Freestro or maybe even Diurnal if he's well protected, then again the opponent is not really going to be able to kill your prime carriers, and you're going to get that value, and it just gives you a big edge over the opponent. The other thing I want to mention is that people are wondering whether these stats that you gain from the upgrades of the talent tree will be applied to just the prime carrier or the whole team. I'm pretty sure it will be the whole team, because based on the wording here, it says activating talents for Lightbearers, Maulers, Wilders, or Graveborn will boost your team's stats. Boost your team's stats, so I'm thinking the whole team, and activate a talent buff tile on the battlefield. Now then later they say, for the talent buff tile, the ally you place on the talent buff tile becomes a prime carrier and gains additional abilities in battle. So all heroes I think on your team will gain the stats from the upgrade here, as long as you're activating the faction talent in battle. But then the prime carrier abilities will only be the heroes which are placed on that buff tile. So that is probably how it is going to be. Okay, so Celestial Hypogeans are looking very strong. But for the other factional teams, they're also pretty good. I just think the weakest one is Lightbearer. Recasting the ultimate, for me, it just seems like it won't work too well. Also, the problem just with Lightbearer in general is there are not many top tier heroes to be running in it. And if, for example, like you wanted to have the recast of an ultimate on the diagonal, the problem is if you're running light bear heroes, they don't really protect the diagonal well. Like maybe you could do something like, for example, something like this, but these are not going to give intoxication stacks to the diagonal. And he has a bit of protection, but overall this is not an optimal team. This is like, you would want like the haste buff and healing from Damien in this team, and then and more heroes. So if you have diagonal built, I think your optimal choice will be making him the prime carrier on your Celestial Hypogean team. I think that is going to be one of the top performing teams. Something like Fresco, Diagonal, and Scarlita, or Dunlinger, Diagonal, Scarlita. I think both can be good options. And then you just give the ultimate, you have the Scarlita. Even you could give damage reduction to Diagonal if needed. And then you can have haste buff and healing from Damien, and then finally you can run whichever hero you want, because if only 3 are required, this would give you the effect. And I would really want to have one of the Fiestros be the second prime carrier. I don't know where the second buff tally will lie on the map, but I suspect it will not be here, for example, because in the Graveborn faction talent, you will have to put your sacrifice in the backmost position. So I find it unlikely that the sacrifice will be on the other ally buff tile. I think the other ally buff tile might be where this illusion is, or somewhere else on the map. Anyway, a team like this, and then finally you can throw in any hero here, Lily May, you Rainier. Basically you have a lot of options. Even if you want more protection, you could go for something like Thorin, and you could do a team like this. This would be fine as well. Okay, so, and as for the artifacts, the seasonal artifacts, out of them, I think there are 2 key choices. One is Verdant Spell, which is very similar to Evocation Spell. Periodically apply a class-based buff to each hero. Then there is Greatsword Spell, which is similar to the Quick Blade Spell. Accumulate physical damage to charge the skill, summoning a giant sword to attack the enemy. So this you would want to use on a physical-oriented damage comp. It gives you attack and attack speed, and your physical damage will charge and deal damage. Now the thing is, in this one, there's no stuns. It doesn't have the utility of Quick Blade Spell. And then this one is Arcane Spell, is very similar to Evocations, or to Crescent Spell. Accumulate magic damage to charge the skill, unleashing multiple magic projectiles to strike enemies. And this one, I like this one. I think Binding Spell for PvP could be good because it gives you crit, which is good for stats. Periodically throw an enemy to another, dealing damage and stunning both enemies. So there's control here. So that's kind of similar to Quick Blade Spell as well. Yeah, I Frontline Spell, yeah, and then you can always go for Confining Spell for Lockdown, or Enlightening Spell for the unaffected state for your backline hero. So these are all going to be good options for you. But the important thing for Celestial Hypogean team, keep your prime carriers alive. The longer they live, the more value you're going to get from the faction talent effect, and it is very strong. It's seriously a mini Iron combined with a stun and true damage, 1.5 second stun every 3 seconds. It's kind of ridiculous. So you want to keep them alive. But then this team is going to be kind of unbeatable. So if you don't have, for example, 3 well-built-up Celestial Hypogean heroes, I think that's going to be your priority for the new season to try and compete. Like, for me, I don't. I have Rainier at Mythic Plus, I have Highly Ascended Scarlita, and that's it. And then I have Legendary Plus Freyasto. I haven't, like, I was going all in onto my certain heroes. I didn't try to widely build up my whole team. But I'm going to try to get Freyasto up to Mythic Plus at least. Upgrade his exclusive equipment, and then try to run him in the Supreme Arena, because he's going to be helpful for Dream Realm, and also he's going to be pretty good in Supreme Arena. Mainly for the faction talent. If the faction talent was not a consideration, I would probably not be running like a Mythic Plus Freyasto, but because it is, it's going to make him much more viable. So that is for the Celestial Hypogeans. Now for the other factions, there are a lot of other great options. So while the heroes in general are just really strong for Supreme Arena, so I think one great go-to team can be something like this. Your prime carrier will probably want to be Lily May. It can also be Arden. So if you have 2 tiles, you can give one to Arden, one to Lily May. And this is like kind of the standard Iron crowd control team. You have the damage from Arden, who does well when there's other forms of crowd control, like from Iron. You have the healing and the haste buff from Damien. You have Lily May to interrupt the opponent's crowd control. So especially Wilders are going to be great in raging duels, if there is a raging duel, where you have to control the enemy. Because not only will you be unaffected on your heroes which are on the buff tiles, because they start the battle with a shield, and as long as the shield is in effect and not destroyed, then they are going to have an unaffected state. And you also can control the enemies. And definitely you could throw in an Almas here. If you go, that's like full in, going full in on the crowd control type strategy. You could put in a Carolina or an Elsa for more damage from a different faction, because you already have 4 of one faction. So those I think would be some great teams. The other team archetype will be this core. Granny, Haywin, and Floribel. And then you can give Floribel the enhanced tile. Basically the ally buff tile for Wilders gives ranged heroes infinite range. If a hero is a melee hero, they're not going to get a boost of range, so there's no point of putting a melee hero on the buff tile, but for the other ones, and it gives them attack speed as well. So this is going to help like Floribel cast more over the course of the fight and deal more damage. So I think Floribel would be a great hero to have the prime carrier position. And this is more of like a tanky team. Then for the final 2 hero options, you can run 2 Graveborn heroes in here. You could even run Scarlita in a team like this. However, you're probably going to save Scarlita if you have her for a Celestial Hypogean team. And that is basically what I would recommend for the Wilder, 2 different core of Wilder teams. Now, if we're looking for Maulers, everyone should try to build a Mauler team as well, because the Mauler effect is going to be pretty strong. If we just take a look at all the Maulers here. So, for the buff tiles, I would recommend Brutus and Shakira being on the buff tiles wherever they are. Because they're going to be teleported into the enemy team, which you would want your tanks to get the effect of that. They're going to have boosted a shield on top of their health, and they're going to have like boosted life drain. They're going to be periodically dealing damage every 5 seconds to adjacent enemies. It's going to be great for them. And then you would want to have Smokey here to try and heal everyone, including your frontline team, and then OD and Coco. Coco is a great option in general for Supreme Arena because the damage reduction gives you that extra time to eliminate enemies where you're pretty much unkillable, while you have the healing from Smokey and the damage reduction from Coco. Definitely you could run something like Mikola if you didn't want to run Smokey, or even Smokey and Mikola for more support. This can be a great team as well, because you're going to have 3 melee heroes which do well with Shakira's Lupin's Aura buff. You can run Reese as well. Basically, when we're talking about the Mauler teams, I think go full 5 Maulers, because you're going to gain a bit of a better factional synergy from that, and also all the Maulers are pretty strong, they work well together, so I think these are the teams that I would recommend for Maulers. Okay, now after Maulers, we've done Light Bearers, now Graveborn. Graveborn is going to be a team, definitely you'll want to run Thorin. Most people will have Thorin built up. If you have Carolina built up as well, probably want to run her too. If you have Igor built up, I think making Igor the sacrifice, positioning him in the backmost tile, is a pretty good idea. So, the Graveborn faction talent, the buffed hero, I would give the buffed tile to 3 heroes. Either a Nara, if you build her up, Sylvina, for more assassination, or Carolina. So, the hero on the buff tile will gain 2 major effects. So number 1, they're going to gain basic stats, like 16% of the basic stats of the sacrifice, which will be the Igor here. They will also gain healing. The sacrifice will lose health every second, and that health will be basically transferred to the prime carrier. So I think definitely for like a melee hero like Sylvina, Nara, this can be a great tile for them, because they're going to be tanking damage. They're going to need that healing. If, for example, you put Carolina here, the thing I'm thinking of is, in some situations, Carolina is safe in the back, not taking any damage, so she won't be getting the value of the healing. But I think Carolina there would be fine as well. And another great hero to be running here, and even potentially as a sacrifice, is Ludovic. Because the sacrifice will be losing health every second, but Ludovic can sustain, he can heal back up, and also having a healer on your team is a good option. So if you have Ludovic belts, I think this would be another good team comp, and Nara probably would be better than Sylvina, because Nara is more flexible into a lot of teams. Looping, like taking the enemy to your side is usually preferred than jumping on the enemy, because Sylvina gets into a risky position at that point. So team cores like this are going to be really good. Now, that is pretty much it for Graveborn. I think really you should only probably put together 1 Graveborn team, because there are not that many Graveborn heroes to choose from. Out of the Wilders, definitely I think you can put together 2 teams. Mauler I would choose for 1 team, 1 Graveborn team. Celestial Hypogeans ideally 1 team, and then Light Bearers. And obviously you will not be running all of these. I think the strongest one is definitely Celestial Hypogean. one Wilder team should be, and then one Mauler team. I think those would be the optimal 3 Supreme Arena defenses, because then it also allows you to use your best heroes of the faction on those teams. If you, for example, do 2 Wilder teams, which I might be doing in the early stages before I get like Fresto built, then you kind of have to separate your strong heroes onto the 2 different teams rather than making one super powered team. So Lightbearers I think are the weakest because I'm not a big fan of their effect, number 1, and number 2, the Lightbearer heroes right now are not too amazing. Like, really the key PvP heroes from Lightbearer are Vala, Rowan to some extent. Tamesia is just fine, but she's not gonna have her supreme, her seasonal skill that she had in this season, so that is gonna make it a little bit worse for her PvP content. Sinbad would be fine if you build him, but I think a lot of people won't be able to build him up, as well as like all the other heroes coming out. So I think this would be your core: Tamesia, Rowan, Vala. And then you would probably give Vala the prime carrier tile, because then you can get her a double ultimate cast to try to get her snowballing, get a kill on that first hero is going to be big for her. And then along with this, I would probably go for a full assassin type strategy. Run a Sylvina in here as well, and then maybe even Shakir. But Shakir will be probably on your Mauler team, and he'll be better used over there. So like, let's say you have Sylvina, Vala, Tamesia, Rowan, and then you could even go for like a Thorin, Soul Pacted the Vala to protect her. You could go for Igor, something like that to like stall out the team, the enemy a bit more. Yeah, so I think teams like that would be fine. And like, the thing is, for this factional, the talent buff tile, people might think Mariel would be good because like 2 ultimate casts of Mariel is gonna nuke down the enemy team. But the problem is, in theory, even if it's a good option, you're really gonna have to worry about protecting your hero on the factional tile. Everyone is gonna target and attack your factional tile hero. Either they'll try to kill it with Vala, or they'll try to kill it with Sylvina, they'll try to loop it in with Nara. Basically, your factional talent tiled hero is going to be very susceptible. So you need to have a hero that will be able to survive, and maybe you'll even need to add the added protection of like Thorin, for example, just to totally guarantee that your hero is not going to be nuked and they're going to get the value of their the buff tile. Okay, so I think those are some good teams to try out, but definitely I am imagining Celestial Hypogeans to be top performing. And what I'm going to try is Freesto, Scarlita, Rainier, and then 2 other heroes. And I'm going to definitely have a Damien as probably one of the hero options. And then the final hero, I'm not entirely sure yet. Damien just does really well with Scarlita specifically. Because she will count as a surviving ally for her true damage when she descends, and giving you that heal and continuous like haste buff. Now, if you're going to go for Dunlinger, and you want to talk about the overall optimal team for Supreme Arena, probably going to be the strongest overall Supreme Arena team. I do think it's going to be these 3, and then probably Fresto as well. A team like this: Spellbind, Dunlinger, have the prime carrier be the diagonal, protect the diagonal further, and do something like this. This way you have the energy boost for him, and then finally you can run Damien. I think this could potentially be the strongest overall team, because Spellbind locks out the ultimate cast. You have the sustain and healing from Damien and his buff without his ultimate. Because he spawns a Toy Trade at the beginning of the match. You don't need his ultimate. So it's actually, Damien is like the perfect support along with Dunlinger. You have the Freestos for the tankiness. The only issue is that if Dunlinger dies, his effect will wear off, but I think he would survive long enough. I think this is going to be the dream optimal team. Another thing to keep in mind, in Lightning Spell I think still will work here. Even though you have Scarlita here, Scarlita doesn't usually actually take the effect of the Enlightening Spell, and so it will be given to the next rearmost hero, which will be the Diurnal here. So Diurnal would give the value of Enlightening Spell, but probably you could also go for like, I don't know, probably Enlightening Spell would be the best. The haste buff gives an intoxication stack to Diurnal. Basically, this is probably the dream team, and if someone has it, I think they're beating everything. But there is counterplay. It's Lily May. but you can only run Lily May on one of your defenses. So like they'll just avoid your Lily May team and they'll free clear any one of your other teams. So that is the other thing. Like I'm thinking, even if I invest in Freyasto and I get the Freyasto, Rainier, Scarlita team, it is not going to be able to really compete with this team. This team is still going to be like the meta strongest team, I believe. So yeah. And so I think if people have, for example, if they're going to spend and get all of these heroes built up, I think one of your teams is just going to be a guaranteed loss. So then you just have to try to make the strongest teams on the other two. Overall, you'll want to have 3 strong teams so that even if they easy clear one of yours, you still have a chance of fighting back with the other 2. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this video. You can let me know of your thoughts in the comment section down below. But definitely the faction talent system is interesting, and I really hope that they make it so that only 3 heroes of a faction are needed to deploy the effect. That will make it a lot more easy for people to run this combo, even if they have limited options. So anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video. And until then, everyone, peace out for now.